8 habits no one sees from Chinese Qigong experts to tighten your midsection fast. David pressed both hands flat against his lower abdomen and exhaled slowly. Nothing, no firmness, no structure, just soft, distended flesh that had quietly surrendered. He was 42 years old, standing shirtless in his bedroom at 6:47 a.m., staring at a reflection he'd been avoiding for months. 3 gym memberships, countless AB workouts, protein powders, meal prep containers, and still, this. His midsection looked swollen, tired, older than the rest of him. It wasn't just fat. Something structural had collapsed from the inside out. He'd done planks until his shoulders screamed, crunches until his neck cramped. Tried keto, intermittent fasting, elimination diets. The scale dropped, then climbed back. But the real problem, the soft, weak center, never changed. 3 weeks ago, Dr. Morrison had pointed to his lab results. Your visceral fat is concerning. It's not cosmetic, it's metabolic. It's affecting your liver, your insulin response, your inflammation markers. David had nodded, signed up for another boot camp, pushed through 6 sessions, then quietly stopped. What was the point? On his commute that morning, stuck in traffic near Riverside Park, David noticed something strange. Through the bus window, he could see a group of older adults moving in synchronized slowness. Tai Chi, probably, or Qigong. But one man caught his attention, about 70, thin but not frail, standing perfectly still with one hand resting low on his belly. His midsection looked firm, lean, alive, not gym-carved, just solid. That evening, David walked to the park. The group was finishing, but the older man remained, moving through slow, twisting sequences, his torso rotating like a tower turning on its base. David approached awkwardly. "Excuse me, what is that? What you're doing?" The man smiled. His face was lined but calm, posture impossibly upright. Qigong, internal energy cultivation. His accent was distinctly Chinese. "You practice?" "No, I've been trying to fix this." David gestured toward his midsection. "Gym stuff, diets. Nothing works." The man studied him. "You try to squeeze from outside, but core is not built that way. Core is built from inside, from breath, from alignment, from dantian." He placed his hand low on his belly, just below his navel. "Energy center. You must learn to feel it first, then everything follows." David looked down at his own belly. He'd never thought about feeling it, only fixing it. "Come tomorrow morning, 6:30. I teach beginners. My name is Chen, Mr. Chen." That night, lying in bed, David did something he hadn't done in years. He placed both hands on his lower abdomen where Mr. Chen had indicated. He tried to breathe into that space, slowly, deliberately. He felt nothing at first, just soft resistance, tightness, shallow breathing, but then something shifted, a warmth, a faint sense of internal pressure, like a balloon inflating deep inside. It disappeared almost immediately, but it had been there. Real. He kept his hands there until he fell asleep. If you've ever felt tired even after a full night of sleep, or frustrated with diets that don't last, tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar. And stay with us for the next chapters. David showed up at Riverside Park at 6:32 a.m., already regretting it. The air was cold. Around him, 8 people, most significantly older, stood barefoot on grass, hands resting low on their bellies, eyes closed. Mr. Chen moved among them, adjusting shoulders, hips, speaking softly in Mandarin. When he reached David, he smiled. "Good, you came. Now, stand." David stood. "No, stand." Mr. Chen nudged David's feet wider, softened his knees, tilted his pelvis slightly forward. "Feel ground, feel weight drop into earth, feel spine lift to sky. Body becomes bridge, stable, strong, not tense." David tried. His thighs shook within 30 seconds. "Breathe, not chest. Here." Mr. Chen tapped David's lower belly. "Dantian, below navel. Breathe into this place. Belly expands like balloon, then slowly exhale. Belly pulls back towards spine. gentle, like ocean wave. David closed his eyes and tried. His breath kept catching in his chest. His belly felt disconnected, forgotten. But Mr. Chen stayed beside him, one hand hovering near David's lower back. Again, slower. After 5 minutes, Mr. Chen released him. David's legs trembled, his core burning in a way crunches never achieved. But it wasn't exhausted. It was awake. "This is Zhan Zhuang, standing post-meditation," Mr. Chen explained. "Every day we hold this, 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. Your deep core muscles, transverse abdominis, pelvic floor, they wake up, not by force, by attention, by breath, by time." Over 2 weeks, David returned every morning. The standing felt impossible at first. His mind screamed to quit, to do something more productive. But something kept him there. Maybe Mr. Chen's calm insistence. Maybe the way his lower back, tight for years, started to release. Or maybe the strange fact that his genes felt different. Not looser exactly, but sitting differently on his hips. Like something inside had reorganized. "At home," Sarah noticed. "You're walking differently, taller maybe." "I'm just breathing more," David admitted. At work, Jake, his gym-obsessed co-worker, was less subtle. "Dude, what happened to boot camp? Now you're doing old people stretching." "It's Qigong, Chinese internal practice. It's working better than the gym ever did." Jake laughed. "Let me know when you want to get serious again." But that night, David took his measurements. Waist circumference, down 1 inch. Not dramatic, but real. And unlike every other time he'd lost weight, this felt different. His belly wasn't just smaller, it felt firmer, more responsive. Like muscles he'd forgotten existed were rebuilding from deep inside. He placed both hands on his dantian and breathed. The warmth was stronger now, more consistent. He could feel the subtle expansion and contraction, the gentle massage of his internal organs, the way his lower belly drew inward on each exhale. It still felt absurd that just breathing, just standing could change anything. But the numbers didn't lie. Something was shifting quietly, invisibly, from the inside out. By the 4th week, Mr. Chen introduced twisting sequences. "Now we teach body to rotate, to spiral. This is how Qigong masters keep core strong and organs healthy. Not by crunching, by ringing." He demonstrated slowly. Feet planted, knees soft, arms hanging loose. His torso rotated gently left, then right, like a tower turning. Obliques wake up. Spine decompresses. Digestive organs, liver, intestines, stomach. They get squeezed, released, massaged. Blood flow improves. Lymph moves. David tried. It felt strange, too easy to be effective. But Mr. Chen corrected constantly. "Slower, softer, don't force. Let gravity do work." After 10 minutes of spiraling, David felt something unexpected. A release in his lower back, warmth spreading across his midsection, an odd rumbling in his belly. Not hunger, but movement. His digestion waking up. "Good. Body remembers. Now we teach walking." David thought he definitely knew how to walk, but Mr. Chen had other ideas. In Qigong, walking is meditation. Pelvis tucked, spine long. Weight transfers fully from foot to foot. Every step engages core. In China, in Hangzhou, where I grew up, old people walk this way every morning by West Lake. Not for exercise, for cultivation, for longevity. They walk, and their core stays strong until they die. David practiced the walking form. At first, it felt rigid, unnatural. But gradually something clicked. His pelvis tucked slightly, his lower belly engaged automatically with each step, his spine lengthened. He felt taller, more grounded. And by the end of the path, his core was burning, that deep internal burn that felt like activation. That afternoon, David had a follow-up with Dr. Morrison. She reviewed his labs and frowned. "Your weight is only down 4 pounds, but your waist circumference dropped significantly. Your visceral fat markers improved. Fasting glucose is better. Liver enzymes normalized." She looked up. What changed? Qigong, Chinese breathing and movement practice. Dr. Morrison nodded slowly. Whatever it is, keep doing it. These are real changes, internal changes, not just cosmetic. David left feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Validation. His body was responding, not to force, not to deprivation, but to something gentler, something older. But that evening, everything threatened to unravel. His company announced a major project deadline, 3 weeks of late nights, high stress, impossible demands. Sarah was frustrated. You're barely home, and now you're waking at 6 a.m. for Tai Chi or whatever. It's Qigong, and it's the only thing keeping me sane. You look exhausted, David. I feel better than I have in years. She stared, unconvinced. First it was the gym, then keto. Now this. When does it stop? David didn't have an answer. Was this just another phase, another desperate attempt, or was it actually different? That night he sat on his bed, hands pressed against his dantian, breathing slowly. The warmth was still there. The sense of something solid forming deep inside. He thought about Mr. Chen's words. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to do hard things. Discipline is about creating a life where the right things feel easy. Maybe it was time to stop fighting and start listening. Would you rather force yourself with willpower or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment which path makes more sense to you and share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. The project deadline consumed David's life. 14-hour days, meals at his desk, sleep fractured and shallow. But something strange happened. He didn't collapse the way he used to. Every morning, no matter how little sleep he'd gotten, David still showed up at Riverside Park. 25 minutes. That was all he could spare. But those 25 minutes became the architecture that held everything else together. One morning, Mr. Chen handed him a thermos. Pure tea, fermented. Helps digestion, reduces bloating. In traditional Chinese medicine, organs have clock. Stomach strongest 7 to 9 a.m., large intestine 5 to 7 a.m., liver detoxifies 1 to 3 a.m. When you eat and sleep against this clock, body struggles. When you align, everything flows. David started drinking the tea every morning. Earthy, smoky, nothing like the bitter black coffee he used to chug. Within days, his digestion, always sluggish, started to regulate. His belly felt less distended. The bloating that made his midsection look twice its size began to ease. Mr. Chen also taught about meal timing. In China, we eat big lunch, small dinner. Westerners do opposite, skip breakfast, eat nothing, then huge meal at night when metabolism's slow. This creates fat storage around organs. Around belly, you want tight midsection? Eat when sun is high, rest when sun is low. David shifted his eating window. Bigger breakfast, substantial lunch, lighter dinner by 6:30 p.m. It felt counterintuitive. Everything he'd read about intermittent fasting said skip breakfast, eat late. But his body responded immediately. He slept better. Woke with more energy. His midsection, measured obsessively every Sunday, continued to shrink. 2 more inches gone. The real test came during the project's final week. A crisis erupted. A client demanded massive revisions, deadlines compressed, tempers flared. Jake, running on energy drinks and 4 hours of sleep, snapped at everyone. David felt the same pressure, the same exhaustion. But something was different. During lunch, David found an empty conference room. He stood in the Zhan Zhuang posture, feet wide, knees soft, pelvis tucked, hands on his dantian. He closed his eyes and breathed. 5 minutes. When he opened his eyes, the storm inside had quieted. His heart rate dropped. His mind felt clear. That evening, Mr. Chen introduced the final piece. Abdominal self-massage. Slow clockwise circles around navel. Follow path of large intestine. Stimulates digestion. Releases tension. Moves stagnation. In TCM, we call this organ massage. Very simple. Very powerful. Do every night before sleep. David tried it that night, lying in bed, hands moving in slow circles. It felt awkward, almost silly, but after a few minutes, something released. A gurgling sound, a sense of movement deep in his gut, a softening of chronic tightness he'd carried for years. He fell asleep with his hands still resting on his dantian, breathing into that warm, increasingly solid space. The project wrapped, the crisis passed, and David had survived without falling apart. More than that, he'd stayed centered, grounded, functional, not perfect, not stress-free, but resilient in a way he'd never been before. Sarah noticed. You didn't spiral this time. Usually when work gets crazy, you just crash. But you didn't. David nodded slowly. I'm learning a different way to be disciplined. Not harder, just smarter. She squeezed his hand. Whatever it is, keep doing it. 3 months into his Qigong practice, David had what Mr. Chen called a wu, a sudden insight. It happened during standing meditation. David's legs were shaking, his core burning, his mind screaming to quit. But instead of fighting, he did something different. He placed his attention fully on his dantian, that space 2 inches below his navel, and breathed into it. Not to escape discomfort, just to feel it, to inhabit it, to be present with it. And suddenly he understood. His midsection had never been weak. It had been disconnected. For years, decades maybe, he'd lived entirely in his head, thinking, planning, worrying, performing. His body had become a vehicle he drove without feeling, a machine he fueled without listening to. And his core, the literal center of his body, had slowly shut down, not from lack of strength, from lack of attention, from lack of presence. Every crunch, every plank, every boot camp class had been an attempt to fix the problem from the outside, to impose strength through force. But that wasn't how the body worked. The core wasn't a muscle group you sculpted. It was a system you cultivated, a relationship you rebuilt, a connection you restored. The secret wasn't in the exercises, it was in the awareness, in the breath, in the patient, daily practice of feeling what was happening inside. The standing meditation wasn't building strength, it was rebuilding neural pathways between his brain and his deepest core muscles. The diaphragmatic breathing wasn't just oxygenating, it was massaging internal organs and activating the transverse abdominis, the natural corset around his waist. The twisting wasn't targeting obliques, it was wringing out digestive organs, stimulating peristalsis, moving lymph and blood. Every habit Mr. Chen had taught him, the tea, the meal timing, the walking, the massage, wasn't about doing more. It was about paying attention, about creating space, about allowing the body's innate intelligence to function the way it was designed to. You understand now, Mr. Chen said that morning, watching David's face. Core strength is not about muscles you see. It's about muscles you feel, about nervous system, about mind-body connection. This is what Qigong has always taught. Western fitness tries to dominate body. Eastern practice tries to listen to it. David nodded, tears unexpectedly forming. He felt something he hadn't felt since childhood, embodied, present, at home in his own skin. That weekend, David stood in front of the bathroom mirror again. Same mirror, same lighting. But everything else was different. His waist was 3 inches smaller. His posture was taller, more aligned. His belly button, once buried in soft tissue, was visible again, centered, the skin around it firm and responsive. But the real change wasn't visible. It was the feeling of his hands resting on his dantian, the warmth radiating from that space, the sense of groundedness that flowed through him whenever he breathed consciously. His core wasn't just tighter, it was alive, connected, functional. He wasn't fixed, he was whole. And the difference between those two things, between fixing and becoming whole, was everything. That evening Jake texted, "Dude, what's your secret? You look completely different." David smiled and typed back, "It's not a secret. It's just really, really slow." 6 months later, David stood in Riverside Park at dawn, hands resting on his dantian, breathing into that warm, solid space below his navel. Around him, the Qigong group moved in synchronized slowness. He was no longer the awkward beginner. He was simply there, present, grounded. Mr. Chen approached after the session. "Your wife, she came to watch this morning." David turned. Sarah was standing at the edge of the park, holding 2 cups of tea, smiling. She walked over. "I wanted to see what you do every morning. The thing that changed you." Mr. Chen bowed slightly. "Your husband is good student, patient, humble. These are qualities of true internal practice." Sarah looked at David. "You know your old gym friend Jake? He called me yesterday, asked if you'd teach him what you're doing. Said his back is destroyed and he can't keep up the way he used to." David laughed. "Jake wants to do Qigong. He said, and I quote, 'Whatever David's doing, it's actually working, not just for abs, for everything.'" Later that week, David had his 6-month checkup with Dr. Morrison. She reviewed his labs in silence, then looked up, genuinely surprised. "Your visceral fat is down 40%. Your insulin sensitivity is normal. Your inflammation markers are excellent. Your waist-to-hip ratio is out of the metabolic risk zone." She paused. "I've been practicing medicine for 20 years. I've never seen someone reverse these markers without medication or extreme intervention. What you're doing, this Qigong practice, it's working at a deep metabolic level." David nodded. "It's not just the movements, it's the breathing, the meal timing, the rhythm, the nervous system regulation. It's a whole system." "Well, I'm putting it in your chart as a formal recommendation, and I'm referring 3 other patients to you for information." At home that evening, David stood in the kitchen preparing dinner: steamed vegetables, brown rice, a small portion of grilled fish. Sarah watched him move. "You even cook differently now, slower, more deliberate." "I do everything differently," David admitted. "I walk differently, sleep differently, think differently. It's like I'm finally living in my body instead of just dragging it around." That night, lying in bed, David placed both hands on his dantian one more time. He breathed slowly, feeling the expansion, the warmth, the solid core that had rebuilt itself cell by cell over months of patient practice. His midsection was tighter than it had been in 20 years, but more importantly, it was his, connected, responsive, alive. He thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, desperate, exhausted, convinced his body had betrayed him. And he thought about Mr. Chen's words that first morning. "You must learn to feel it first. Then everything else follows." The secret had been there all along, not in a workout plan or a diet, but in the simple ancient practice of paying attention, of breathing, of standing, of feeling the center of his own body and learning slowly, patiently, to live from that place. The transformation hadn't been fast, it hadn't been flashy, it had been quiet, internal, and utterly real. And it had changed everything. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story.